And I want to touch on a couple of points here this morning, and it's not going to be a very long lesson. We are in the process of moving, and this morning it was organizing trailers and staff to clean, and this afternoon it's returning trailers and taking stuff. So I'm not going to be able to spend as much time with you as I really would like. And but I want to just put something out there that just gives us a little bit of food for thought this morning. So how do we glorify God? You know what we did here this morning by assembling here on the first day of the week to worship God, by partaking of this memorial feast, by giving back to God, all of those things without you even realizing it. Those are all ways that we glorify God. Obeying His commands, obeying His commands means that we start producing fruits of the Spirit. And the fruits of the Spirit, and I'm not going to mention them now because we all know them, but it's the goodness that comes out in you. It's that wholesomeness that comes out that people see in you. And it's really, really good. And, by doing these things, we show the godly character within us. And by doing that, we are glorifying God. And then by reflecting His character every day, we find that we rub off on people. Sometimes we work in environments where you cross paths with people that aren't always as savory as you'd like them to be. And, eventually when you stand your ground and you are the person that you're true to yourself and you're true to your spiritual, what you stand for spiritually, those things rub off on people. You'll find, I don't know if you've ever been in a workplace, but you find some people come to work and they're always in a great mood. And you come to work and sometimes your mood's there, or you're disappointed, or you've been cut off, another taxi cut me off, or someone scraped your bumper and just drove off, or any nonsense you can think about. But all these things impact on us, and you get to work and you aren't always that person that you want people to see. But then you look at your colleague just across the room and he's always smiling, and you think, what the heck? How do you do that? And it's a choice. And I want to leave that with you this morning, because the mood that you portray wherever you are is a choice. You cannot tell me for one single second that you don't have control over your mood. You might be having a terrible day, but you can control your mood. You can control your mood. These are the things that rub off. They say monkey see, monkey do. But when people watch you and when people see who you are, very quickly they pick up what you stand for. And that's glorifying God. See, demonstrating patience, love, faithfulness, and all these things, we bring glory to Him. And ultimately, it involves a full commitment of living for Him and making His will and attributes known to others. How do we reflect God's character? It's very simple. I have a business partner. I'm always talking about this, but the best life lessons are the ones that you live, that you experience. I have a business partner he's a phenomenal guy. He lives in New York. He's a Polish immigrant. He's an elderly guy. He's almost 70. I should say he's only 70. And, when things are tough or when things don't go away, he'd often, use the Lord's name in vain. And I've let it slide for about 2 years. And the other day I just decided, you know what, I've had enough, because it freaks me out. There's so many things you can say, but that's the one thing that really freaks me out. And now when he says it, it's like he'll say it and he'll say, oh, I'm sorry, Zane, I'm sorry, And the other day he said it twice in a row, and I just cut the call on him. And I just can't deal with that anymore. But slowly but surely, people will see in you what you stand for. Do you understand what I'm saying? By being that person, by being true to yourself, other people will look at you and eventually they'll say, I know what Scott stands for. I know who Scott is. I'll respect Scott, And that rubs off. And eventually they see the godly character and they say, but hold on, this guy comes to work every single day. Tough, and Scott's in a sales environment, I was in a sales environment. I understand, we're both in telecommunications. And I understand that, you go through ups and downs, and people, and especially if you're chasing targets, and everything's about bottom line. And if you show your best every time, people will start seeing you for who you are. So it's important for us to understand that. One of the things is demonstrating God's love and compassion. It's when we live out the character of Christ by showing love and kindness to other people. Practice self-control and integrity. I was talking about moods just now. These are the things that we can do, that we actually have control over. When we strive for excellence in our work life and we maintain a strong sense of self-control, it reflects God's diligence in our excellence. Your performance, your achieving, your getting to the top of the ladder, that excellence is reflected through God's character. And then, we have all these examples of all the external things. But we also have to focus on our inner person, our thoughts. I don't know if it was a Bible study here or if it was something I was watching online, but, your thoughts are more important than what you realize. You can come in, the outer person can reflect all the goodness. You can show people the side that you want them to see. I can do that, and I'm sure you can as well. When I walk through those doors, you'll see the best of me, but you never see the rest of me. And your thoughts, the things that you think and the things that you do away from you, that is what matters, And you'll be judged for that, because if you've thought it, you've done it. And engaging in specific actions and practices, we obey God's commands. And if you ask me what God's commands are, it's everything that portrays his character to the full. Love, patience, all the fruits of the Spirit, everything that you see there, that's obeying God's commandments. Not only the new covenant, not only the laws of Moses. No. Every single thing that's in this book that creates a wholesome life that glorifies God, those are his commandments. We produce spiritual fruit when we live a righteous life. When we give generously, we're glorifying God. The money here is to glorify God. The money here it's not to polish up someone's car, who's an elder or the preacher. It's not to create a lavish lifestyle for anyone who works in the church. This money here is to glorify God. It's to further the work of the kingdom. So giving is glorifying God. And when we live honorably amongst each other, when we conduct ourselves in that way that people look at us and they say, I can see who this person is, then you've won the fight. And we do things, the things we do in this life. Derek always talks about the kingdom of thingdom. And I can't put it any better. Actually, my daughter Hannah was mentioning this yesterday, the kingdom of thingdom. And, the decisions we make, we just have to sometimes take a minute, take a step back, just slow down, just think about the decisions and the actions that you take. Because inevitably, those actions have an impact on someone else. We do everything for his glory. If we look back on some of the examples in the Old Testament, we look at Moses' request. Moses asked to see God's glory, and God responds by revealing his attributes of mercy, grace, and justice. He never got to see God. Who was God? Moses wasn't one of those people that was just, born with he was laid in a basket in the bulrushes, but, he didn't have it all from the beginning. He went for the first 40 years of his life, it was rough. It was good, I should say, and the next 40 years was rough. And then God decided to use Moses as an instrument to lead the people out of Egypt. But he wanted to see who God was. This God that appeared to me, I want to know who you are. And God says, through my goodness, you will know exactly who I am. Exodus 33, verse 18 to 19, then Moses said, now show me your glory. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name. See, yeah, God's choosing to show Moses favor. And remember that Moses could not see the face of God. So that's one of the first examples in the Bible of where you see someone that almost had to have faith in a greater being. Someone had to have faith. Imagine this. Imagine having to go and face Pharaoh and to tell him straight, the people that you have here as slaves, I've just come to take them away and expect to get away with your life. I can just imagine, what? Lord, you want me to? No ways. You go do it. I can imagine what the conversation must have been like. And then also the creation. This very creation shows the glory of God, his magnificence. I listened to the American people that were here, and maybe a year ago or so, I was talking about a guy I followed, Dr. James Tour, and he has 4 PhDs, and one of the things he does is he's a Christian first and foremost, and he argues about the origins of life. And it's fascinating for me because when he does that, he makes it so clear that you cannot even construct a cell, not one single cell. They can make it artificially, they can simulate atmospheric conditions, they can get it to live for 3 or 4 hours and then it dies. They can't even make a single cell. When we were at school, I don't know if you remember, no, I've got to think back now. We used to talk about amoeba and hydra. Do you guys still do that? Anyway, they the simplest cells that you can get. And Reg, you'll remember. And these people can't even do that. So God's creation, when you sit and you think about it, magnificent. His glory is reflected in every single thing that he created. You think about the Exodus, which I just mentioned earlier about Moses, the restoration of Israel, God restoring his people. These are all events and occurrences that happened as a result of God's intervention, where God made things possible, and in so doing showed his glory. And in the New Testament, we have some examples as well. We have the examples of all the miracles that Jesus did, where he healed the sick, he made the lame to walk again, and the blind, the mute, the lepers. He healed all these people because this is what he could do. And through those specific events, many, many people were added to his church. Many people became believers because they could see. Seeing was believing in those days. And it brings me to this verse this Bible verse in John chapter 20, verse 29. This is right after his resurrection when he appears for the second time, and it's more geared towards Thomas, doubting Thomas. When Jesus says, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. But blessed are they that have not seen me, and yet they believe." That's us. That's us today. We've not seen Jesus, but our faith, and I thank God every day that there's someone, each and every one of us here had someone in our lives that brought us to God. And for the greater part, I think most of it will be parents. Your parents are the people who made sure that you went to Sunday school and that you had the grounding, and that has paid off. And now you see I think the best thing for any parent is to, after many, many years, see their children and their grandchildren, Oscar and Dawn, and there are others here as well. Tom, Annalene, I don't see them here. Oh, there. When you see your children and your grandchildren, and they're all sitting in church, and they're all faithful and worshiping, isn't that amazing? But we should be grateful because each and every one of us had someone who brought us to Christ. And that in itself was a blessing. So blessed are those who believe and yet haven't seen. And I thank the people, like in our case, it was my mother, all of us. My brothers, eventually my father, my mom and my grandma, they were all people in the church. And these are the people that would take you to Sunday school as a little kid, and then, you used to sit and fruitle, and they used to squeeze your hand or pinch you, whatever the case is. But it paid off. Look at this magnificent specimen. So, but it paid off, and I'm eternally grateful because we need that. And if you didn't have that, I see on my way to church, I see people running. I used to love triathlons. It was my favorite thing. And to play golf, all my mates play golf, and they would, and life was fantastic. And you cut a weekend in half, it's not the same. But you get to that point where you start realizing that this is the Lord's day. This is the day that you worship God. You bring glory to God on this day. So when you travel to worship here in the mornings and you see the people running, we travel more or less the same route. You see people cycling. And I said to Eloise this morning, I would love to be part of that group, to go for a nice long cycle, have a good sweat. It's the wrong time. It's not appropriate. This is God's time. Then again, in Matthew 17, verse 5, you talk about the transfiguration, when Jesus, during Jesus' transfiguration, when God's glory was displayed, and the voice declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." This is the time when Jesus was revealed to Peter, James, and John. After that, they had just witnessed his transformation on the mountain, and after he appeared with Moses and Elijah. And here God is declaring his utmost approval, and God acknowledges Jesus as his Son. And God further commands that the three listen to him, telling the three that Jesus' teachings and authority should be obeyed. And here we find God glorifying his Son. God is paying homage to his own Son. And not only that, God is saying to them, you have to listen to him. This man is right. The birth of Jesus, and I'm not going to spend too much time on there. And then one of my favorites is John 11, verse 4. When we talk about Lazarus, you see, many things Jesus did was to glorify him and to glorify the Father. Lazarus gets ill. Jesus is about 60, 70 kilometers away from where Lazarus is. And people send him a message to say that Lazarus is really, really ill. And eventually they say, okay, don't worry, it's been so long now, Lazarus has passed. And he gets a message that eventually Lazarus' body is starting to give off an odor already. He's dead. And Jesus says, Lazarus is sleeping, don't worry. And I often sit now, I've read that many times, and I often sit now and think to myself, why did Jesus take 3 days? He could have been 10,000 kilometers away. He could have just said the word and Lazarus would have been healed. But you see, it was important for him to show his power and his magnificence. And it was important for him to show them that through him, anything is possible. Anything. If I can raise a man who's been dead for three days, and if I can show you in the living, in life, if I can show that to you, then you have to understand how great I am. You have to listen to me. You have to follow me. You have to understand I have your best interest at heart. In Matthew 8, 1-4, Mark, and also in Luke 5, 12-16, Jesus descends from the mountains and he's met with large crowds. And then we read an account of a man with leprosy approaching him. And he says to Jesus, if you are willing, please heal me, if you are willing. And then Jesus touches him and says, I will, be clean. And the man's leprosy immediately disappears. And Jesus then instructs the man to go and show himself to the priest and to offer the prescribed gift as a testimony, but to tell no one else. You see, this man approached Jesus with faith, believing that Jesus had the power to cleanse him. Jesus, in turn, demonstrated his power by touching the man and declaring, I am willing, be clean, immediately curing his leprosy. And after the healing, Jesus instructed the man to follow the Mosaic law, showing himself to the priest and offering the prescribed sacrifice to prove his cleansing and to serve as a testimony. But this man was so in awe of what Jesus had done for him, he went and he told everybody, contrary to Jesus' instruction, because he wanted to glorify God no matter what. And unfortunately, the effect was just the adverse. It was just the opposite of what Jesus was trying to do. Because it meant that scores of people now approached Jesus to be healed and needed favor in one form or the other. But he wanted to glorify Jesus. You see, Jesus' ability to heal the leper demonstrates his authority over anything, over disease, illnesses, society, taboos, anything. Shows his authority. The man who approached Jesus had faith. He had a deep, deep faith. It reminds me of the woman who touched the hem of Jesus' garment, and she was healed. They had absolute faith. And Jesus, his response I am willing, confirms his willingness and his compassion for those in need. So we have that same access. We have the same access to Jesus, and we know that our faith will stand us in good stead. So ways we can glorify God. You know, Nathanael's belief, after Jesus showed him that he knew him intimately, Nathanael, who had been a devout Israelite, immediately recognized and confessed that Jesus was the Son of God and the King of Israel, and a profound act of glorification. See, they didn't recognize Jesus, but Nathanael stood up. He was prepared to risk his life to confess that Jesus was the King of Israel. And then we have more examples where the widow's offering, Jesus praises a poor widow who gave her last 2 small coins, recognizing that her selfless and sacrificial gift, often offered from her poverty, glorified God more than a large offering. We know the story. Sometimes you don't have to do things in excess. Sometimes it's the little things you do that have the most impact. You know, often you think that for me to, and when I came here, I have to confess this. We've been here now, I think, 3.5 years. It's gone so quickly. But I remember coming here and I watched all the projects and the programs and stuff that Bellville was involved in. I looked at how they looked after for Santa Claus and how they raised and the scarves and the gloves. And initially I would think, oh, there's so much need in the world. You know, what's the point? You're not going to solve. You can't solve it. And slowly but surely my attitude changed because I realized that you don't have to touch the whole, you don't have to heal the world. One step at a time. Every single person that you help or where you have an impact on their life is glorifying God. Every single person. So when you think that you have to fix 400 million people, no. You can start by one person. You can start and the impact will be greater. Start with one person and see where it goes. And that was the first lesson I learned here, is seeing that these programs, because initially I thought, oh, what's the point? What's the point? The need in this country is there's such a great need for help that I was so wrong. I was so wrong. And now I look at it in awe because wherever I end up worshiping now, that'll be something that I'll take with me. And I'll be able to tell them, but you know what? You don't have to reach 400,000 people. Reach that one person, and then a second person, and then a third person. Even when Paul and Silas were in prison, they glorified God by singing praises. It never ends. The situation is always there. No matter how dire your life, the situation in your life is, it doesn't matter. You have opportunities every single day. Every single day you have opportunities to glorify God. Grab them with both hands. Grab them and do it. You'll see. Just do it. So how do we glorify God in closing? You know, we acknowledge Him every day in every single thing that we do. Every single thing that you do in every hour of the day. Acknowledge God. When you go to bed and you have a nice, soft, comfortable mattress, glorify God. When you pull your duvet over you and you have a comforter and you probably have an electric blanket and you have all those things, glorify God. Because there are millions of people that don't even have a mattress. Glorify God. When you switch on flick the switch and the lights come on, glorify God. Turn on the tap and there's hot water, glorify God. Open the fridge and you pick what you want to eat today, glorify God. And my second point, and this is something that I want to leave you with this morning, is never be shy or embarrassed to admit that the blessings in your life, everything that's good in your life, everything that you've achieved, everything that God has granted you, whether you've worked and you've managed to pay off your car, pay off your house, whatever it is, managed to put your kids through varsity, thank God. Because if it wasn't for God's will, you would not be able to do it. I promise you, you would not be able to do it. Thank God. We have to glorify God in everything that we do. And I just want to say again, thank you to everyone here. I'm sorry, there's some people that I've got to know really well, and there's some people that I wish I'd spent more time with. Regret always comes too late. So I'm really sorry about that. It was absolutely fantastic. I've enjoyed every single moment at this church. We're going to miss you people, and we pray to God that we'll be back soon. And just from myself and my family, thank you very, very much. First, for welcoming us here, and for the friendships that we've built here. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.